if you're right here in the East venue with us, or over in the North venue at Lincoln Road, maybe you're at the Hunt Club, or maybe you're watching online, and I want to say welcome to you that are watching offshore. Those of you that are at rehab facilities, welcome. Thank you for tuning in with us. We love you. We're with you. Thank you for watching wherever you are online today. Those of you down in Stone County and on the coast, I want you to know I was your way yesterday, and we were down in Mandeville, and I was down there watching my little 8-year-old girl playing a little soccer tournament. And one of the things that hit me as I watched the soccer tournament, right, we were kind of being those parents, and I had out my iPhone taking pictures and capturing some video, and then I looked down the sideline, and you know, the soccer moms had their camera with like lens like this. And I had my little iPhone, and I was trying to capture a few moments with my iPhone and what the game kind of looked like through my lens. And then I started imagining what the game was like through their lens. I want to tell you, it was different. And one of the things that this series has begun to teach us is that we all have a different lens that we see life through. Now, one of the things we want you to know from the very first, listen, Ephesians tells us that each of you is a masterpiece. You are a workmanship of God. He has created you and formed you in His image. So there's not a lens that's better than another. There's not a number that's better than another. But here is what's unique is each lens, or in this series, the 9, each number represents just a different personality type. And our goal through this whole series is that you would become more self-aware of what your lens can do and what your lens really can't do very well, because we believe the more self-aware you become, the more successful we become. Self-awareness is the key to being successful because we can understand ourselves. Now, here's the crushing thing that I've learned and I heard this week. And this is going to mess you up because it messed me up. I was hoping this wouldn't be true. You ready? Many of us aren't seeing the world the way it really is. We're just seeing the world through our own unique lens. And our goal with this series and for today is that you might grow in compassion and self-awareness. Self-awareness of your lens, how you see the world. Compassion for those that have a different lens than you, your husband, your wife, your parents, your coworker, your boss, your kids. Because we know when we grow in self-awareness, we grow in compassion. And when we grow in compassion, we can relate to people better. We have made it to the 7s. Listen, I'm a 7. If you know a 7, man, 7s are known to be the life of the party. We're the enthusiast. 7s are resilient. 7s are versatile. They can be inspiring. 7s are the best at reframing. 7s avoid any kind of pain. That's just us. 7s love adventure. I'm telling you, we are adventure junkies, adrenaline. We see no obstacles, only opportunities. 7s always see the glass as half full. You tell us the dog died, we say he's in heaven. It's just who we are. 7s don't follow the rules. I hate to admit this. Rules are for everybody else. They're not for 7s. Okay? 7s hate the mundane. I'm telling you, we believe there is always something better around the corner. 7's favorite question is real simple. It's what's next? We're ready for the next adventure. So here we go. I want you to see a passage, and I'm telling you this passage, it is a classic reaction and journey of what life is like with a 7. And we're going to look at the life of David. Now, I want to be honest with you. I don't know if David was a 7. But I know this, there are some things and some reactions and some tendencies, some patterns in David's life that remind me of life with a 7. So we're going to be in 2 Samuel. Now listen, 2 Samuel is called 2 Samuel because Samuel was the prophet who anointed David to be the king. We're going to be in chapter 6. One of the things that's happened up to this chapter, Saul was the king, and now David is stepping in as king. One of the first things David wants to do as king is he decides that Jerusalem should be the center of his city, should be the center of his territory. And when he makes that decision, the thing he wants in the center of the city is the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant was just this wooden box laden in gold, had 2 angels over the top of it, and it represented, and it was God's presence. So one of the first things, this is such a classic move for a 7. One of the first things David does is he uses his inspiring skills and his motivating skills, and he rallies, the commentary I read said 30,000 people to move the Ark of the Covenant from one city over to Jerusalem, and it's this celebration, it's these incredible moments, but David didn't follow the rules. And if you know this passage, someone dies on the journey because David didn't move the Ark of the Covenant the way it should have been moved. So David now finds a one, right? Someone who's going to follow the rules. They coach him up. And now in chapter 6, they're trying again. They're moving the Ark of the Covenant. There's this journey. It's this celebration to see God's presence come into the center of the city. And I want you to see how this goes. 2 Samuel 6, 14 through 22. And this is just a picture of what life is like with a 7. Now here we go. It starts off kind of weird. David was wearing a robe. Don't know why he wore a robe. 7s don't wear robes. David was dancing before the Lord with all of his might, while he and all of Israel were bringing the ark of the Lord with shouts and the sounds of trumpets. Man, they were celebrating. As the ark of the Lord was entering the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, was watching from a window. And when she saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord, she despised him in her heart. They brought the ark of the Lord, and they set it in its place inside the tent that David had pitched for it. And David sacrificed burnt offerings and fellowship offerings before the Lord. And he had finished sacrificing the burnt offerings and the fellowship offerings, and then, listen, it's just a party. He blessed the people in the name of the Lord. Then he began to give gifts. He gave a gift of a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and thanks but no thanks, a cake of raisins to each person in the whole city and the crowd of Israelites, both men and women, and all the people went to their homes. This was just a celebration in the city. It was in the streets. It was with the presence of the Lord. They were worshiping. When David returned home, he came with the idea to bless his household, but Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet him, his wife, and said, "How's the king of Israel? How he has distinguished himself today, going around half naked and in full view of the slave girls and of the servants, as any vulgar fellow would do." David said to Michal, "It was before the Lord." Ready? He's reframing. David said to Michal, it's always positive, "It was before the Lord, remember, who chose me rather than your father or anyone from your house to be appointed as the ruler of the Lord's people. I was just worshiping. I was just celebrating. No big deal." Here we go. 3 things we can learn from this passage that we see about 7s that's so life-giving. These are good things about 7s. Number 1, 7s are great reflecting at God's joy. 7s are great at reflecting God's joy. Man, listen, if you walk into a room or if you're kind of trying to change the environment of your workplace, you need a 7. 7s can walk in. They can sense where the tension is. They can sense where the mood is not where it needs to be. And boy, you just lean in on them and they can come in and help that environment be life-giving. Think about this scene right here. Man, they're walking down the street and David's changed the whole culture. Man, they're celebrating. People on the side of the street, like Michal up in the window, is watching from afar and they're envious. They want to be a part of this party that he has created. A couple weeks ago, we had a night here called Movement Night. And what we do with our student ministry is during the weeks, they have house parties. So there are different houses all through the community, and then we bring everybody together one night a month for a movement night. This particular movement night, we had a silent disco. If you've ever done that or not, but you put on the headphones and there's music, you're just jamming. And so all these kids around the atrium just partying and dancing. And the parents started coming in and they were just looking around. And I wish you could have seen the faces of all the students. They were just smiling ear to ear and dancing. You couldn't hear a thing, but there was an environment, there was a mood that was life-giving. I want you to do this. Next time we're worshiping in this room or at the Hunt Club or at Stone County, just cover up the music and look around. Some of you need to tell your face to smile. I mean, really. David danced before the Lord. You might need to learn to dance. Because, it was life-giving. This was something, this should be an environment like David created amongst the streets, where people wanted to come just so they could be a part of this. They wanted to know what was going on. You are a part of changing the culture and the expectations of what church is like. Can I tell you that? 7s, you have a gift for this. You are leaders. You are motivators. You bring energy. And when you lean into something, it will change. You have a superpower to bring joy and to make an environment something that's electric. We need that. I'll tell you something about David. David didn't even know about Jesus. This was before Jesus came, and he was still celebrating. We know about Jesus. We know the gospel. So can I tell you something? We need to celebrate. We don't need to be distant. Did you see Michal? Michal is David's wife, the daughter of Saul. And she was distant. Now think about it. We talked about earlier about the lens. The lens that Michal, daughter of Saul, David's wife, the lens that she saw things through was so different. She grew up as royalty. She was daughter of the king. She grew up distant. She grew up in a position of authority. And she's watching David, who is changing everything about the culture. David was with the people. He was relational. He was connecting with them. He was doing life with them. Listen, some of you want to still have the culture. You still want to look through the lens of a back row Baptist. And you hire people to take care of the needs. And you drop people off so that they can take care of and raise them up. And you want to look for the hymnal. There's nothing wrong with the hymnal, but can I tell you something? Don't be distant. Don't just watch church online. Come be a part of it. And don't just sit in the back row and not be a rule follower and leave early. And what we're saying is, listen, be a part of something. Be a part of changing the culture. And man, be a partner. Be in this so that you can reflect God's joy, so that you can experience all that's going on here. We don't want you to be distant because we know this. You and I, we all worship something. Michal, in that passage, she worshiped the way it used to be. She wanted David to rule the way that Saul ruled. No. David's saying then things are changing, and I'm choosing joy, and I'm choosing not to be distant, and I want to be a part of this. Number 2, 7s can be versatile. 7s, you have a gift for this. Think about David. David was known as a warrior. He led the troops into battle. He conquered territories. David wrote much of Psalms. He was a musician. He played the harp. David was a worshiper. He went down the streets worshiping. And many of you that are a 7, you can wear a lot of different hats. You might not be great at anything, but you're good at everything. And that's not a bad thing. That's a gift. You're versatile in that. Can I tell you something I love about being a campus pastor? It's one of the things I love about my role. Is I get to do this and get to connect with you. Then next week I'll get to be at recovery and be a part of that ministry and see what's going on in the way that you're changing lives in that ministry. The next week I'll be at the gathering with 18 to 25-year-olds and see the way that you are connecting with them and challenging them. Listen, we want a broad job description. We don't want to be limited to just one role. It's like we're a serial entrepreneur. The more we can have our hands in, the more we can see, the more we can experience, the more we can do, the more energized and fueled we are. The more that we're limited to one particular task, the more drained we are. 7s are versatile. Number 3, 7s are a master at reframing. Now, this can be dangerous, but this can also be really good. 7s, did you see David right there? David was doing all of this, and then Michal comes out and just rips him a new one. What were you thinking out there? And then David spins it. He says, I was just celebrating and worshiping the Lord. What's wrong with you, woman? Yeah, that's what we do. That's what we do. And I'm going to tell you something, it can get you in a lot of trouble. We do this because 7s can't stay in a negative space. Man, that's just who we are. And you see this in the life of David. Man, when David was healthy, when he was a healthy 7, he led thousands, hundreds of thousands of people. He conquered territories. Almost everybody listening to this message knows about David and Goliath. You've heard about him. You know a 7. But here's what's dangerous for you 7s. When we get unhealthy, man, the impact can be bad. Here's what you need to be aware of if you're a 7. Number 1, pay attention to the pursuits of your life. One of the things we say at our house all the time, my wife reminds me of this. She says, Craig, when everything is awesome, nothing is awesome. And what she's saying is, whoa. Hold on. Pay attention to the pursuits of your life. We can't do everything all the time. I'm telling you, I will go on vacation. We'll have an amazing time. We've been at the beach for days, riding the waves, eating out, spending money, doing putt-putt golf. We'll have the car loaded. We'll pull out of the condominium we're staying in, and I'm already texting, lining up the next thing we're going to do. And my crew is exhausted. My money is exhausted. But I'm still going. It's like we have a motor that never stops. And we'll tell you something, that can be really good, but it can also be really dangerous. That's why 7s are the most prone to addiction. Our core sin as 7s is gluttony. Okay? This is a true story. We've been a part of a growth group for a long time, and when we go with one particular person, when they host and have us over at their house for group, they cook all these different things. And every time when I come home from their house, I'll be like, I don't feel good. And Kelly will be like, why? She says, it's something you ate. And I start thinking about all the things that I ate that night. And I eat everything that she puts out. I can't stop. I want to try everything. A 7 at a buffet is a disaster. It's just who we are. It's not that we want too much chicken. It's that we want every single thing that they offer because it might be good. And what's next? And have you tried this? It could be fun. That's just who we are. We're prone to addiction. We're prone to gluttony. I call it the treadmill theology. It's like we don't ever want to get off of that treadmill and we just want to turn it up. Now that sounds fun and we laugh at that, but here's what this looks like when it gets unhealthy. Instead of dealing with the job that gets difficult, we get a new job. Instead of dealing with the friendship who's trying to hold us accountable to something they need to hold us accountable, we just spin them right off on that treadmill and we go get a new friend. Instead of dealing with the marriage when it gets hard and we need to hear something from our mate, we just get a new mate. Instead of staying in the house, and listen, I just talked to a 7 who had moved out instead of dealing with what was difficult at home. And I'm telling you, can I tell you something? I'm tired of dealing with that. 7s, you need to deal with the disaster. You can't run from everything. Now, I know that feels like you're getting hit with a brick in the face, but it's the truth. We've got to be willing to deal with things that are negative. The treadmill theology is not the answer to us. Nothing will satisfy you over time except Jesus. It's like a bucket. I want you to imagine a picture of a bucket. And 7's thought is the more we can turn the water on, the better. And the bucket fills up and it just there's holes in the bucket. It's a picture of who we can become when we get unhealthy. And instead of trying to patch up those holes and saying, Jesus, you're the only one that can fill me up, we just think, turn the water up higher and maybe it'll sustain us. Let's go get another friendship. Let's go get another experience. Let's take another vacation. Let's eat some more cotton candy. Let's try pink and then blue. Maybe that'll help. Instead, we got to look. We got to be honest. And here it is. We've got to look inside of you before you change everything around you. Okay? That's really hard because it's easier for us just to spin into something new. It's easy for us just to try something new. It's easy for us when we're drawn to adventure. But the reality is we need to get off the treadmill. We need to pull back from the table. And we need to look inside of us and deal with who we are. Number 2, learn to be fully present. You ready? Even in negative emotions. This is hard for us as 7s. We know one word, fun, exciting. How was your day? Good. I Googled this. Did you know there's 154 million words to express how you feel? And 7s, we're known to be a mile wide and an inch deep, but that's not who we are. You can do better than that. And I want to tell you why this matters. This is the part of preaching that's not fun. My wife has told me the times that she feels the most distant from me and the most alone in our relationship is when she's feeling negative emotions and feelings. Why? Because I won't go there. I'll spin it. Hey, you don't feel like that. And she says, you can't tell me how to feel. Hey, I know you're thinking that, but it's going to get better. And she says, yeah, it might, but this is how I feel now. And one of the things I'm learning to do as the leader of our house, and because I love my wife, and honestly, because if I don't learn how to connect with her in that, somebody else will. Let me tell you what this means for you too. You've got children that they don't see things the way you see things. That's a 7. Man, we've got to find that gear to connect with our daughters or our sons. Ladies, your husband, maybe he is worried about things financially. Maybe he is worried about things with your relationship, and you just keep spinning it. Man, you're creating distance. You're better than that. I want to challenge you to be there even in the feelings when they're negative. You can do this. We can expand our range of emotions, the range of our feelings. David ran from pain. But you think about David again. David was incredible when he was healthy. He was a disaster when he was unhealthy. David's family was a disaster. One of the things David's known for, right, is his kids were just, his oldest son took advantage of his youngest daughter. And David never stepped into that. David saw that happening, but instead of being the man of the house and addressing it, he ran from it. So when we first got married, I would come home in the afternoons after where I was working. This was before I was at Venture. And I would share with Katie all the different jobs that I had applied for. And when I tell you it was a bunch of jobs, it was like 5 or 6, 7 different jobs in 5 or 6, 7 different fields in 5 or 6, 7 different cities. And I'm like, why are you not excited? This is going to be an adventure. We could be in the mountains where it snows. Or we could go to the beach where it's beautiful. Or I could do construction. Or I could do sales. And for me, it was just an adrenaline rush of change. For her, it was a journey, and it was exhausting, and it wasn't security. 7s, we've got to be sensitive that we can become reckless. And listen to this. We will drive the car right off the cliff, and we'll be smiling the whole way. Isn't it fun to be a 7? That's why we're preaching about self-awareness. I'm telling you, sevens, you can do better. And the goal of this message is that when you feel yourself begin to run, when you feel yourself beginning to avoid that pain, you're now going to be more self-aware so that you can pull back on that. And you can say, listen, we don't need to go there. I don't need to look outside. Instead, I've got to get off the treadmill and look inside. There's something in me. Can I tell you who, listen, think about David. When was David's biggest mistake? You know David's highs. When he was leading these thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, bringing the Ark of the Covenant into the city, doing all these famous things, David and Goliath, and the way he stood up to him, the way he mobilized and he stood. Think about how brave he was. Now think about his epic failures. You know it, Bathsheba. And what happened? David got bored. Remember me telling you, sevens, we need a lot of things, right? We're a serial entrepreneur. You limit us to one role, it's like cutting off a limb. Okay? David should have been on the battlefield. His men were at battle, and David was a great warrior. But David avoided going with his team. He avoided being on the battlefield, and he stayed home. And when he did, he got bored. And when he got bored, he got reckless. And when he got reckless, he asked for Bathsheba, another man's wife. Now, wait a minute, it gets worse because he gets Bathsheba. They bring Bathsheba, you know this. And then David begins to think about how he can reframe this and cover this up. And he says, bring Uriah, her husband. Bring him off the battlefield and bring him home and let him sleep with his wife. And then they won't know that I did anything when she shows up pregnant and I can be cleared of it. He's avoiding pain. He brings Uriah home. Uriah says, I'm not that kind of man. My men are at the battlefield. I'm going to stay at the city gates. I won't go home unless they can go home. I'm loyal to my king and to my men and to my country. I'm going back to war. So David avoids pain again, and he calls up Uriah's officials, the guys in charge of him. He says, put him on the front of the battlefield and have him killed. It's a dangerous example of how we can reframe situations. Sevens, the answer isn't always to reframe it. The answer is a lot of times to deal with it. Can we please change the subject? Because that's a lot of negativity about sevens. I want to give you a beautiful passage. And I want you to keep this in your mind. Some of you think this is impossible, but this is possible. Paul said this in Philippians 4:11 through 13. For I have learned to be content, you ready? Whatever the circumstances. Wow, sevens, can you just hear that? Take that in. He's saying he has learned that he can be content whatever the circumstances is. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. And I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. You ready? I can do all this through him who gives me strength. Sevens, the only thing that can sustain you, the only thing that can plug the holes in your bucket and mine is Jesus. The only person that can bring you contentment, it is not your wife. As hard as she's going to try to bring you comfort, to bring you companionship, to go on the adventures with you, it's not your kids. You will wear them out. It's not your job. There's not enough money. The only thing is Jesus. Now, here we go. I'm going to give you the fun stuff. If you live with a seven, you do life with a seven, how can you love them well? How can you speak their language? Here's the first thing. Give us lots of room. We need a long leash. That's just who we are, man. If you limited us to one particular thing or we kind of feel like we're put in a box, man, we get reckless. But if you give us some space and let us be who God's created us to be, we are so creative. We will step into things and come up with solutions that you might not have ever come up with because we have this ability to put pieces together in our mind that's really unique. But we need room for that. We need space for that. You heard me say it earlier, we are serial entrepreneurs. And to limit us with a job description or a task is like cutting off a limb. Think about this. I remember the days in elementary school when it rained outside. The days I couldn't go to recess was like horrible. We are ADHD to the core. Again, we need space. Give us a long leash, let us run. That's who we are. Number two, celebrate us when we get it right. Listen, can I tell you something, man? When your husband or your wife sits down with you and they have a longer conversation with you and they begin to understand, they begin to show some signs of empathy about the way that you're feeling and they try to really connect with you in negative emotions, man, you got to celebrate that. I'm telling you, that is like pulling back a racehorse. Our motors never stop, and when we slow down and we connect with you and we're able to relate with you and to pray with you, it's not that we don't want to be there, it's just that our minds go 1,000,000 miles an hour. And when that happens, man, celebrate that with us. Let me tell you another little, this is just for free. There are moments where sevens don't want to be the camp counselor. You know how the camp counselor is always joyful? He's always coming up with the next little thing or the next move or the next game. There's sometimes for sevens when we walk into an environment and we don't want to be responsible for making it fun. And you know, one of the worst things you can do for a seven when they're like that is to say, what's wrong with you? It's kind of like you see somebody at church, where you been? Yeah, it's that same thing. Instead, man, you sometimes just let us be, even if we're not the life of the party. And say, listen, I love you when you bring such joy and you bring such creative ideas and you change the whole feeling to make it better, but I love you when you just need to be. And that's okay. Third thing you can do. If you want to love a seven, you ready? This is real simple. Join in the fun. Tell y'all, I remember so clearly, I think it was 3 summers ago. And it was the first Friday of summer. And my wife is off on Fridays, and I'm off on Fridays, and the kids were out of school. And my wife is a 6, okay? And she looked at us, this was spontaneous, and she said, let's go canoeing on the Okatoma. Everything about canoeing she hates: dark water, rapids, rope swing, danger, adventure, jumps off into the water, rocks, everything. And she did it. And she joined the fun. And I still remember it now. Every year, the first Friday of summer, we go canoeing together as a family, and we look for that. We love that, right? And she's speaking our language. She said, listen, if I can't beat you, I'm going to join you. And I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to just celebrate with you. When you do that with a 7, man, you are speaking their language. I want you to think about this passage. Remember where we started? We started with David, and he was bringing in the troops, 30,000 of them, in the Ark of the Covenant. Where was Michal, his wife? She was distant. She was watching from a window afar. What would that have been like if Michal would have joined in with David? What if Michal learned to dance a little bit? What if Michal just let her hair down for a second? David was wearing a robe, taking his clothes off. We'll stop there. But what if Michal would have been a part of the journey with him? It would have been different. Now listen, don't get carried away with that, 7s. Listen, it is not your wife's job to fulfill you or your husband's job to fulfill you. They can't. But hear me say, if you want to love them well, join them. We love companionship. I've got the prayer for a 7. I want you to see this. We've had a prayer for each number. And I want to tell you this. Somebody in my growth group did this. I thought this was amazing. Her husband was a 1. She went back to the message on the notes in the app, and she pulled the prayer up, cut it out, taped it on their bathroom mirror. And so every morning she prays the prayer of the 1 over her husband who's a 1. What a great idea. This is the prayer for a 7. Let me find it in my notes. God, help me to run to you and not from pain or towards only pleasure. Help me to develop deep and lasting friendships with people who want to have fun but can also keep me grounded. Help me to have the tough conversations that real life requires, and remind me to be thankful for what you have done. 7s, listen to me. Jesus, his biggest enemy was dead religion. That wasn't him. Jesus spent his days with people in the streets, in the villages. Jesus loved people well. Jesus was exciting. He didn't limit this thing to a box, a list of do's and don'ts. Let me tell you my fear for you. My fear for you is that you would meet, capture, and create every party on this side of heaven, and you would miss the ultimate party in heaven. You guys pray with me. God, I thank you so much for the joy and for the lens that you have created within 7s. God, I thank you for the superpower they have of just feeling an environment and changing. God, the influence that you've given them, the way they have a gift to motivate, to encourage, and to pull people out of what can be difficult seasons. At the same time, God, I pray for 7s that, God, we would develop a gear and we would develop the discipline to meet people where they are. Even in difficult seasons, God, there are men, there are women who wish and who are envious and who are longing for their husbands or wives to join them in the pain. And God, I pray that you give us that gift. You give us that ability to relate, to hear, and to connect with the people that we love, even when it's a difficult or dark season. God, I pray that today would be a day that some sevens hear this message and they quit running. They get off the treadmill of the next experience, the next outlet, the next relationship, and God, they would begin to look inward instead of outward. Jesus, I thank you that you can fulfill us. And I pray today we would look to you for that and to you alone. It's in your name we pray. Amen.